Yo guys, what's going on? I'm Tim Kelly, joined by Justin Godsey. This is the Real Sports Talk and Nation Sports Blog presents the 30 Clubs, 30 Previews MLB Special. Our third year doing this, and Justin, a team that made the playoffs for the first time since relocating from Montreal last year was the Washington Nationals. They were a 98-64 team under manager Davey Johnson, and that was with Steven Strasburg being shut down late in the season. That was with Jason Worth only playing half the season and having Preview-Harper in his rookie season. So you would tend to think that things will only go up from here. They add in a couple pieces in the offseason that were big, so let's talk about those first.
This was huge offseason for the Washington Nationals. This team really went out and really focused in on their pitching, and they did add some depth over in the outfield. When it comes to their pitching, they picked up former Los Angeles Angels starting pitcher Dan Herron, who's going to be coming over here. You know, this is a guy who, during the offseason, was speculated to a lot of trade rumors from, the Angels and the Dodgers that would send Dan Herron Dan Herron to the Cubs for Carlos Marmol. And, that really didn't go through. So there was another suitor, happened to be the Washington Nationals. So he's going to be set up to be the number five starter on the team. Now they went into, relief mode this time, and they went out and got Rafael Soriano, who was a former New York Yankee. He's going to be coming over here to become the team's full-time closer. And then when you go into their hitting, they picked up Denard Span, former outfielder of the Minnesota Twins. He's going to be coming over being the team's starting center fielder. And a really surprising move and a whole new switch to his whole mechanics. Micah Owings, who has played phenomenal during the spring. This guy is going to be transitioning over from a starting pitcher over to a first baseman. There is actually some speculation that, once Michael Owings is 100% healthy, he was recently released by the Nationals, but he said once he's 100% healthy, the Nationals said they would re-sign him to a minor league contract, and we eventually would be up in the team somewhere down the line in August or possibly even in September.
Yeah, we'll see. Michael Owings was always a tremendous hitter and just an average pitcher, never really worked out as a pitcher, so we'll see if he does have a role on this team or some other team as the season goes along. I would tend to think that we could see him, much like Rick Ankiel was for a couple years, be a productive hitter for some teams. So we'll see what happens there. Beginning with the Nationals, going through position by position, we will begin with catcher Kurt Suzuki. Suzuki last year came over middle of the season from the Oakland Athletics, and in 43 games with the Nationals, he really picked up his production, going from hitting .218 with the A's to hitting .267 with the Washington Nationals. 5 home runs, 25 RBIs, was extremely productive in his 43 games there. And I think one of the reasons for that was the pressure was off of him. His biggest role on this team is working with the pitchers, doing a good job behind the plate, and then the rest just came to him at the plate because he was hitting low in the lineup. It's a very good lineup. Players on base in front of him, so there is never a ton of pressure on Kurt Suzuki in this lineup, and I think that's what enabled him to have success last year.
No, he's going to continue batting low in this batting order because when you look at this team is just headlined with so much great talent. Denard Span, Bryce Harper, Zimmerman, and Kurt Suzuki. Like Tim, like you said, he really works well with the pitchers. There's a bunch of young guys in this rotation. Strasburg, Gonzalez, Zimmerman, Detweiler. It's a match made in heaven because Kurt Suzuki, his time was really coming to an end when you got to the full development of Derek Norris with the Oakland Athletics, and they brought over George Gutaris. And you know what? Kurt Suzuki was, on a down note with the Oakland Athletics, so they decided to trade him. Coming over to the Nationals, it kind of really worked out for him. So we just have to wait and see how well he will, transition from the American League over to the National League full time.
Yeah, we'll see how well he does do that. I think they have a pretty solid backup option in Wilson Ramos. And quite honestly, I think Wilson Ramos has a future as a starter, whether it is with the Nationals or whether it is with another team. I would not be surprised if he's able to reclaim that starting position at some point this year, because 2 years ago, he hit .267 with 15 home runs, 52 RBIs, was pretty solid behind the plate, and that's good production to get out of your catcher. Last season, it began with a tumultuous offseason where he was actually kidnapped by Somalian pirates or something. He was kidnapped in the offseason, and that just kind of set things in motion. He had a rough year last year, was only able to play 25 games, hit 265 with 3 home runs in that time. So I think that they felt like coming into this year, Wilson Ramos has a chance to earn that position back, but they're not going to head into the season with him as their full-time starter. Over at first base, Adam LaRoche, who they signed to an extension, a 2-year deal with an option for a 3rd year from both sides this offseason. It came off a season last year where he hit 271 with the career high, 33 home runs, 100 RBIs, and he's another guy that throughout his career he's been someone that can hit you 25 home runs. He had 32 one year in Atlanta, but for the most part he's a 22, 25 home run guy. 80 some RBIs is what you could expect out of him, and he's been with a bunch of different teams, whether it was Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Arizona, so he's kind of bounced around. But last year he really settled in this lineup, and he was kind of that veteran influence in a lineup that lacked the leadership of Jason Worth. So he was that veteran influence on a very young lineup that hadn't been down the stretch before, and he was extremely productive in doing so.
Adam LaRoche really stepped up in 2012 for this Washington Nationals team, and I was really impressed by the Nationals. They really wanted him to return to the team. You know, there was a lot of speculation that he could be going to the Boston Red Sox. There was other rumors that he could go to the possibly even the White Sox. So that was a rumor that was brought up. But Adam LaRoche, he's staying there in Washington, staying there as their full-time first baseman. This guy will get you the home runs, 33 home runs we saw last year. You know, the 271 average. This is a guy who can hit up, 280. That he has the capabilities of doing that, but we haven't seen it yet. But we'll just have to wait and see. You have to have that power return to the lineup next season for Adam LaRoche. I think this team could be really successful with Adam LaRoche in their batting lineup.
He's one guy in this lineup that I would say he kind of topped out what he's going to do last year. I think realistically expecting him to hit 33 home runs, it's not likely this year. So probably 26, 27 home runs. 89 to 95 RBIs is right in the area of what you want to look for this year from LaRoche. His 2 backups are going to be Tyler Moore and then Chad Tracy, who also will get some looks over at third base, so we'll talk about both of them in a second. Danny Espinosa is going to be the backup, or the starter, I should say, at second base, and Espinosa has been a very good, productive player for the Nationals early on in his career. The one concern with him is his average. Hit only 247 last year, 236 in 2011, so you want to see him get that average up. But Justin, he's a guy that's going to give you about 60 RBIs, 20 home runs, steal you 20 bases, has a good glove in the field, so the average isn't necessarily where you want it to be, but adding in guys who are going to bring a higher average like Denard Span into this lineup, getting Jason Worth back for a full year, having Bryce Harper continue to develop, I think that the average isn't as much of a concern anymore with Espinosa. It's just a matter of getting that same production power-wise and on the base paths that you've gotten the last couple seasons.
Yeah, absolutely. Danny Espinosa, back when he was in the farm system with the Potomac, at Nationals, this guy was phenomenal. The guy hit up to about 22 home runs a season, and he was very phenomenal. Coming up to the major league level, we did see a small decrease in his first season, which he only played 28 games, but he really improved a lot of us. But the only question that I really see right now is that average. This is a guy that can get up to 280 to 290, even in the batting even 300 at some point in his career. He's only a 3rd-year veteran in Major League Baseball. We still haven't seen the full best of him. The sky's the limit for Danny Espinosa. This guy has been, compared to Chase Utley. I think he hasn't really fulfilled the Chase Utley comparison yet. We just still got to hope to see that average go up a little bit, and then you got to keep on, supplying the power with the bat that Danny Espinosa has. Somewhere down the line, this guy could hit, 290, maybe up to 300.
I think that is aiming a little bit high. I feel like he's a guy that throughout his career, he's going to be a lower average guy, maybe 260, 270, but asking 290, 300 may be a little bit too much. And comparing anyone to Chase Utley when he was in his prime before he had all the knee injuries, that's a tough comparison to live up to. His backup is going to be Steve Lombardozzi, one of the most fun names in the MLB, and the Nationals fans have fun every time his name is announced. In 126 games last year, Lombardozzi hit .273, 3 home runs, 27 RBIs, stole 5 bases. He can play second, he can play short, he can play third. He's extremely valuable to this team off the bench, and he's someone that will give you a good bat. He can steal your bases. So a lot of teams, Lombardozzi would even get a look as a starter, and he very well could at some point in his career still, because he's not a very old player, 24 years old. So Lombardozzi is a key piece off the bench for this team, and I like him a lot. Over at shortstop, Ian Desmond is a guy to me that really came out last year and had a season that he shut up a lot of his haters, because 2 years ago in 2011 he had .253, 8 home runs, 25 stolen bases. That was great, but he also got caught stealing 10 times. And a lot of people began to wonder, is this a guy at the plate who's never going to live up to his potential? Because he's never been a very good fielding shortstop, so he needs to live up to that potential at the plate. Last year, came back, really killed it with the average, hit .292. I think that's about as high as we're going to see him hit. 25 home runs, 73 RBIs, stole 21 bases, only got caught 6 times, so he improved there. And overall, at the plate, Ian Desmond is one of the better hitting shortstops in the game right now.
Yeah, he really surprised a lot of us. I think that that last year was the season that we were all hoping for Ian Desmond. This guy had a tremendous bat in the minor league farm system for the Washington Nationals, and we just saw it last season in 2012. Even though he is a 4-year, going on his 5th year in Major League Baseball, last year was his breakout year. You know, going into 2013, this guy has a lot of fantasy value to him. He's really skyrocketed his being a top 10 shortstop in Major League Baseball. And you know what? Going into this year, I think this guy has potential of reaching 25 home runs, but you know what? You got to take a step back. You hope that he can bring his average up to about 300, because I think this guy has a lot of potential to being, the next great, shortstop. I have a lot of potential on him. I hope that he can reach 300. That's what I really expect. I think 292 was phenomenal. The power was great. I just hope that this guy can reach up to 300, and I think a lot of players in this, lineup can hit 300, because this team is phenomenal. This team has a lot of great hitting mechanics. It's under great coaching, and it's phenomenal. I like Ian Desmond. This guy plays great, great defensive baseball, and it's always good to have a guy who can have that power as a shortstop.
Yeah, and Ryan Zimmerman's another guy over at third base that I think he needs to have an improvement this year. I know he had 25 home runs and 95 RBIs, but they are paying him a good amount of money, and I think that hitting .282 is alright, but I think he can do better. I think he needs to be out there closer to the full 162. He's never been a guy that can put it together back-to-back seasons. I want to see him play like he did in 2009 when he hit .292, 33 home runs, 106 RBIs, stole a couple bags. That was the year, to me, that he really had his best season, and since then he hasn't been able to quite live up to that, and that's what I want to see out of Ryan Zimmerman this year.
Absolutely. Ryan Zimmerman, a very phenomenal defensive type of third baseman. This guy will produce year in and year out. Back in 2009, it was probably the best year of his career. This guy hit 33 home runs, 106 RBIs. Ever since then, we haven't really seen those triple-digit RBIs. We just hope that he can step up a little bit more, try to get back into that type of potential that he had in 2000 and 2009. 282. I'll take that, but you're also getting great defense, like I said. So it's always great to have Ryan Zimmerman as your team's starting third baseman. I think this guy who wins countless Gold Gloves, it's just deserving. Watch this guy. This guy's a human highlight reel over at the third base, and you understand why this guy is always a Gold Glove caliber third baseman.
Yeah, he is, and I think at the plate he can continue to excel. Either way, he's already one of the top 5 third basemen in my mind. Now, his backup, Justin, and a guy who's going to get some looks over at first base, is the guy that you're familiar with because of his time in Arizona, and that is Chad Tracy. Chad Tracy came back last year after a couple injury-riddled seasons in 2010 and 2011, and he really produced pretty well for this team.
Yeah, Chad Tracy he's really making this huge comeback to Major League Baseball, in the early parts of his, not in the early parts of the career, but, recapping his time with the Diamondbacks, he was a very good fan favorite. We're talking about 2005, 2006, 2007, where this guy hit about 20 home runs a year, and it's right in the prime of his career. And then he really went down on a down note in 2009, 2010, where he went on to go play for the Chicago Cubs for 28 games, went on to go play for the Florida Marlins. At the time, it was the Florida Marlins in 2010. Really fell off there. Then in 2010, this guy was just up and down from minor league camp to minor league camp. And then in 2012, last year, this guy has really proven to himself that, I'm back at Major League Baseball. I'm really back to go full time. I'm going to be serving as a backup to Zimmerman. It's not a bad option. Chad Tracy, he's right. He's getting up there in age, and this guy can still produce. In 73 games last year, about a 269, 3 home runs, 14 RBIs. I do expect for him to get more playing time. Not as much because Ryan Zimmerman is going to be that team's everyday third baseman, but this guy can come up with situations where there's runners on second and third, and they really need that power bat, and I think you cannot go wrong with Chad Tracy.
Yeah, he's a very good option off of the bench, and a very good option in left field. As much of a lightning rod player as he is Bryce Harper, natural center fielder, but they have him playing over in left. And Harper last year won the NL Rookie of the Year. I think that you could make a case that Todd Frazier had a pretty good season too, but Bryce Harper overall probably was the best rookie in the National League. Hit 270, 18 stolen bases, 22 home runs. I want to see him get the RBIs up from 59, and he struck out a little too much for my liking at 120 times last season, but overall he has a very good power swing. He's a tremendous outfielder. He plays the game the right way, and he's kind of that guy that if he's on your team, you love him, but if he's on the other team, the eye black and everything, it kind of rubs you the wrong way. So Bryce Harper's a guy that, as a Phillies fan, there's no love lost between me and Bryce Harper, but at the same time, I'm not taking anything away from the guy. He is one of the brightest young players in the MLB. Not as good as Mike Trout, but he is a tremendous young player.
Yeah, a phenomenal outfielder Bryce Harper is. I followed this guy, during his a little bit throughout his college days and coming over to minor league baseball. This was the star. This is the phenom of all the Major League Baseball. Bryce Harper. I saw this guy play at the Hagerstown. It's their Class A affiliate. This guy really blew up. 14 home runs, 46 RBIs in 2011. And then in 2012, having somewhat of a split season, 21 games in Syracuse, the Syracuse Chiefs, which is their AAA affiliate, and then making his way up to the Washington Nationals Major League Club. This guy played phenomenal. His power went way up, 22 home runs, 59 RBIs, and he batted 270. I do expect that average to go up a little bit more. This is a guy who, like I said, this guy has potential to hit 300, and you know what? Are we going to see it this year? That's still up in the air, but when you look at this year, I think that what he really needs to do is really work on the hitting mechanics, try to bring that average up a little bit. You would still hope that power is still there in his swing, but I think for right now, he's really got to improve more on his hitting mechanics. Like Tim said, you want to hope to bring up those RBI counts, and I think that's the main part of his 2013 campaign. Now, Tim, I want to ask you a question. Between Bryce Harper and Mike Trout, who do you think will have most likely the sophomore slump?
I think it's actually more likely that Mike Trout could do it, but at the same time, Trout is in a much better lineup, so there's not, or I shouldn't say a much better lineup, because the Nationals have a very good lineup, but they don't have Josh Hamilton and Albert Pujols and Mark Trumbo either, so I think it's more likely that Mike Trout were to fall into it, because I think Bryce Harper is going to ultimately be the more consistent player throughout the course of his career, but to this point, I think that Bryce Harper has not been quite as good as Mike Trout, so it's tough. They're both going to be great players for a long time to come, and we'll see what happens with them. Backing him up is Tyler Moore out in left field. Moore last year in 75 games between first base and left field. Moore hit 263 with 10 home runs, 29 RBIs, and even stole a few bases. So he's another piece that the Nationals have on this team. He's very young, only 25 years old, and he gives this team just some more depth on this bench. And a 10 home run guy on your bench is it's really extremely valuable to have, and I like him a lot. Now, Denard Span is going to be the starting center fielder. Span is coming over from the Minnesota Twins, who traded both their outfielders, two of their potential center fielders this offseason, in both Ben Revere and Denard Span. And with Span last year, there have been trade rumors for a couple years since. He is a guy that a lot of teams value because of his season that he had back in 2009 where he hit 311. Since then, I think it's become more clear he's a 270, 280 hitter, but he's cheap. He's going to steal you about 20 bases, maybe even up to 25. He's going to get on base and play very good defense in the outfield. So Denard Span is a very good addition to this team, I think.
Absolutely. I was really disappointed with the Minnesota Twins because this team has just been on a great downfall. They traded a lot of big name players, and Denard Span being one of the heart and soul players of their outfield. He's now gone. He's with Washington, and you know what? This guy, like Tim said, he's going to still use some bases, about 20. On total, about 20 stolen bases a year. But you know what? You're getting great defense out of him, and he has a solid average, about 283. I think what you're going to be seeing out of Denard Span 2013 is, about that same average, about 283, 287, somewhere in that criteria. But overall, Denard Span is an awesome pickup for this team, and you cannot go wrong with acquiring him because he plays great defense. He's going to bring you a solid average year in and year out.
Yeah, and one guy that now becomes a backup with Jason Worth getting healthy and then bringing over Denard Span and having Bryce Harper for the whole year, that's Roger Bernardina. And Bernardina is a really good player. He had 291 last year in 129 games, 5 home runs, 15 stolen bases. So that's another very valuable piece that you have on your bench. And if you were to need to add depth in any other position, whether it's in the bullpen, whether it's in the starting rotation, which right now it doesn't appear they need to, but if for some reason they would have to, they have a trade piece in Roger Bernardina. If not, they have a lot of depth, a guy that can be a pinch runner off the bench, a defensive replacement, or even come up and be a solid hitter for you, or step in for a big injury. So again, not only do they have good starters, but the depth on this team is very impressive. Over in right field, Jason Worth is going to be the starter, entering his 3rd season with the Nationals, coming off 2 seasons where he really underperformed, hit 232 with the Nationals in his first year, 20 home runs, 58 RBIs, 19 stolen bases, and then last year he was a guy who hit 300, but that was only in half a season, 81 games. A wrist injury cost him a majority of the season, hit 5 home runs, 31 RBIs, stole 8 bases. So he's producing pretty well, but a wrist injury cost him half the season. He came back in time to hit a walk-off home run in the playoff, or to get the Nationals to the playoffs. So I like Jason Worth still as a player. I think the Nationals, I think everyone knows that the Nationals overpaid him big time, but overall Jason Worth is a guy who's been in the thick of things. He's been known to hit clutch home runs in the playoffs in his career, and he is going to be a piece to this team that still provides very good pop.
Absolutely. I mean, personally, I'm not a big fan of the whole contract with the amount of money that the Nationals laid out on the table for Jason Worth. Since he signed that contract, I knew this guy wasn't going to produce since day one. But this guy still brought pop in 2011. But like Tim said, with that wrist injury going into 2012 was the biggest course of concern for him. 5 home runs, 31 RBIs, and batted 300. In 81 games. I guess I would rather take the average than what the power numbers really totaled up last year. But going into this season, I think that Jason Worth could be, a threat. I think that, with a lot of people really downing him in his overall performance with the Washington Nationals, he's got to prove his haters wrong. And I think this is a season where he can go out with the Nationals at the peak of them. It's going to be a high competition this year. You're going to need the full, you need Jason Worth 100% healthy. And with the Atlanta Braves in this division, you've got the Philadelphia Phillies. Jason Worth really needs to be on his game this year, and he needs to be 100% healthy. And we've got to see the Jason Worth that we saw with the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, when it comes to their backups, Tim, you mentioned Roger Bernardina. You got to look at some of the prospects in the outfield as well. That guys that the Nationals could bring up sometime in the upcoming August and September. You got Yuri Perez, he's a really solid outfielder. You got Tyler Moore, who's been really explosive throughout his time in the farm system. He saw some time last year, and then you also got Roger Bernardino, who can actually be a solid trade piece if this team really wants to add depth or possibly bring up a couple of more prospects. Just put them down in their farm system. You cannot go wrong, with trading Roger Bernardino. But with Roger Bernardino, what he brings, he's fast, plays great defensive baseball. He's a solid backup to any MLB team.
Yeah, he certainly is, and I think that he almost is too good to be a backup, but that's the advantage that the Nationals do have. With Jason Worth, I think the one thing that he is hoping to get back this year is some of the power with that wrist injury. Even when he came back last year, while he had the big home run, Jason Worth was not a guy that had a ton of power in his bat. So with the wrist hopefully getting better, he should be someone, he's had wrist problems throughout the course of his career, he should be someone that is able to get the pop back. Now, looking over the starting rotation, this is where things get even scarier. We will begin with Steven Strasburg, a guy who was shut down late in the season last year, a decision that was very heavily criticized, but I couldn't have agreed with decision to do it more because it saved him long-term from having another injury happen, and it showed in his production earlier on in the season that that was the right move to make. He was 15-6 with a 3.16 ERA last year in about 160 innings, 28 starts, so that extra 5 starts really hopefully kept him from having any injuries, any other arm injuries, because he's already gone through Tommy John surgery once. He's a tremendous young pitcher. He has a great arsenal of pitches, and he is going to be a Cy Young candidate for a long time to come.
Absolutely. Steven Strasburg is just phenomenal overall. His fastball is nasty. Coming over from the San Diego State Aztecs, their baseball is phenomenal. Great work from San Diego State, making this phenom the best at what he is right now at Major League Baseball. And Steven Strasburg, this guy's going to be carrying a big workload. And I was actually really thinking about the big competition that's going to be going for number 1, Strasburg versus Gio Gonzalez. But overall, you got to go with the guy who has the best and crazy stuff in their arsenal, and that is Steven Strasburg.
Now, his number 2 guy was an ace last year, finished second in Cy Young voting, so they have another very good option. That is Gio Gonzalez, 21-8 with a 2.89 ERA, just under 200 innings last year. 2 complete games, one of which was a shutout. Now, in the offseason, he did have some drama with being named on that list in the Miami steroid clinic, but it appears that he actually was innocent and that he was not one of the people that purchased drugs from the lab. So we don't know, but what we do know is that Gio Gonzalez has been an extremely good pitcher between the A's and the Nationals last year, and he only continues to get better every season.
Yeah, he's going to keep on improving every single year. This guy, 21-8 with a 2.89. This guy had Cy Young caliber numbers last year. Like I said, 21-8, 2.89 with the 207 strikeouts. It's really, really questionable right now on who should have been number 1. But you know what? Like I said, you got to go with the guy who has the most nastiest stuff with the pitching, and that's going to be Steven Strasburg. But at number 2, and when Gio Gonzalez is on the mound, this guy is phenomenal. And I like what they did. I was really surprised that Oakland decided to part ways with him. And coming over to the Nationals, I did have some concerns, but he really proved us all wrong, and he really went out there and produced. Now, when he was on the list of the steroid allegations, I've always known this guy was innocent. This guy is phenomenal, and you know what? I just never saw that Gio Gonzalez would do such a thing. This guy has crazy, pitches in his arsenal, and this guy is overall good. I honestly thought that he was a clean guy, and he is, and that's phenomenal.
Yeah, it is good news to hear that. Now, I don't know if that necessarily means that he was innocent, but it means in that...
They just don't need that negative potential coming in the
no, they don't need that, that's for sure, and hopefully it just all goes away and we never hear anything else with Gio Gonzalez because he is one of the best young pitchers in the game right now. And it's an extremely scary one, too. I think probably one of the best, if not the best in the game, depending on how much Steven Strasburg continues to develop this year. But at the number 3 spot, the depth just continues to pile on, and that is with Jordan Zimmermann, who last year was 12-8 with a 2.94 ERA, 195 innings. We've gone through teams whose number 1 starter did not have an ERA under 3.20, and we have a guy here at number 3 whose ERA is at 2.94. Justin, that's just flat out scary.
That really, Jordan Zimmermann, no relation to Ryan Zimmerman, but Jordan Zimmermann, this is the guy in his early parts of his career where it sounded like he was going to have good potential, but, he came up with the Nationals in 2009, really didn't have it there. He was actually demoted back down to the farm system in 2009 and a big part of 2010. And going into the 2011 season, it still wasn't really there. And in 2012, he just wowed us. 12-8 with a 2.94 ERA. This rotation, I think we finally found the Jordan Zimmermann that we saw, back in his college days at Wisconsin Stevens Point. And this guy was phenomenal there. And we're just waiting for that full potential. In 2012, we saw it. Jordan Zimmermann, no doubt about it, is a solid number 3 guy for this rotation.
Yeah, and he's a guy that also came off of Tommy John surgery. He's the one who was the original success plan that that he was built on the same plan that Steven Strasburg was coming back from Tommy John surgery, and we see how it's paid off for him, which is one of the reasons that I was so in favor of shutting down Steven Strasburg late in the season last year. Now, Ross Detweiler is going to be the number 4 guy, and again, a 3.40 ERA, 10-8, just a very good number 4 starter in Ross Detweiler. And then, Justin, at number 5, you talked about how they added Dan Herron, and Dan Herron's someone who was coming off of a down year with a 4.33 ERA with the Angels, but just 2 years ago he had a 16-10 record with a 3.17 ERA. If you can get that type of production or anywhere close to what he used to be in Arizona or Oakland, you're getting a steal in Dan Herron, at least for the fact that he's your number 5 starter. Now, they paid him over $10 million, so they do expect him to be good this year. But let's say he does give you the 4.33 ERA. That's the worst case scenario, like last year. Well, he's still your number 5 guy. If he does any better than that, then he's overachieving for being the number 5 guy, and I think that's how Nationals fans need to look at Dan Herron.
Absolutely, and I think Dan Herron is the reason why they put him down at number 5, and they're really, have a lot of, faith in Ross Detweiler at number 4. I think Dan Herron could be at home at number 5. We all knew that he wasn't really going to get high up there because last year we saw the full development of Jordan Zimmerman. Joe Gonzalez went off last season, and then you got Steven Strasburg, who just continues to get better and better. But they also really need another arsenal down in the bottom spots. Not saying that Ross Detweiler is that guy, but Ross Detweiler, he's still an up-and-coming guy. He's going to be going into the rotation this year. I actually think it's going to be his second full year in the rotation. You cannot go wrong. He really had some nasty stuff last year. 10-8 with a 3.40 ERA. I really hope that he can really bring that ERA down a little bit, bring it down a couple of points. And I think Ross Detweiler could be at home at number 4. Now, as for Dan Herron, yes, he did go on a down year last year with the Los Angeles Angels, and I was hoping that this team could really, hold on to Dan Herron for another year because, the pitching rotation right out there in Los Angeles, they did acquire Tommy Hanson. I still think that Dan Herron could have felt at home over in Los Angeles, but coming over to the Nationals, it's able for him to get onto a whole new phase, and he's able to go. Not saying that the Angels are a contending team, he's able to help out the Nationals on a more positive type of base right now because this team they do have the hitting, they do have a lot of the good stuff there in Washington, but coming over to the Nationals is going to be a good accusation for this team.
Yeah, I think it will, and this bullpen also picked up a big guy in Rafael Soriano, who's going to be the closer. But before we get to him, we get to the 2 setup men because the Atlanta Braves still have the best bullpen in this division. Absolutely filthy 7th, 8th, 9th inning, where pretty much if you get past the 6th inning and you're losing to the Braves, the game is over because they have Eric O'Flaherty, Johnny Venners, and Craig Kimbrell. But the Nationals have built a pretty damn good bullpen with Drew Storen and Tyler Clippard being the setup man. Drew Storen last year, 3-1, a 2.37 ERA, tremendous season out of him. And then Tyler Clippard, who was expected to be the closer last year, actually was, but just missed the beginning of the season, saved 32 of 37. So he wasn't a great closer, wasn't horrendous at the position, but I think settling into a setup man role is probably what's best for him at this point of his career. And then Rafael Soriano, in the last 2 years that he's been a closer, which would be 2012 with the Yankees and 2010 with the Rays, he's been lights out, saved over 40 games both seasons. Pretty much was a seamless transition from Mariano Rivera to Rafael Soriano last year. I think he is one of the better closers in the game right now, and this is a scary bullpen. It's a scary lineup. It's a scary starting rotation, and it's a scary team.
Absolutely. If I was facing the Nationals, I'd be scared out of my mind because this team, from top to bottom, is nothing but talent, nothing but power, and it's an overall phenomenal team. Now, looking into their bullpen, starting off with Rafael Soriano, it's really understandable why he left the New York Yankees. I know the Yankees really wanted to keep him because their bullpen is not really where it was, a couple of years ago. And they really needed Rafael Soriano to say, yes, you're going to be getting, Mariano Rivera back. And, Rafael Soriano, he wanted to close. So he's not going to get it in New York with, Mariano coming back. So he decided to take his talents over to Washington, and he's going to get that role. Drew Storen and Tyler Clippard, these two guys are phenomenal. I still think Tyler Clippard should be, a middle-of-the-inning type of reliever, even though this team still had, Henry Rodriguez, who's my favorite player on the team. And you got, the redevelopment of Zach Duke, who's really, really raised some eyebrows. He was a AAA All-Star last season. He's really, getting himself back into the game. He was with the Arizona Diamondbacks for a short period of time a couple of years ago. Really didn't have it there, so coming over to Washington was good. Drew Storen, this guy, last year, he was a little bit injured last year, but was able to get back, up to a phenomenal strength. He went 3-1 last year with a 2.37 ERA. And man, this is a bullpen, this starting rotation, this hitting, it's just, oh my God, it's scary, man. It's if you're playing the Nationals, you should be scared out of your mind.
So Justin, it is an extremely scary team, a good lineup, just everything on this team. They have the depth, and they won 98 games last year without Strasburg down the stretch. And they added Denard Span. Bryce Harper's only going to get better. I think Ryan Zimmerman can improve this year. To me, Justin, this is a team that wins about 95, 96 games this year. The reason I have them losing a couple more games is because I think the Braves are going to get a little bit better with the addition of both Upton brothers. I think that the Phillies will have Chase Utley and Ryan Howard for the entire season. And the Mets may even get a little bit better. The Marlins suck both seasons, so it doesn't really matter. But I think adding in some of the pieces that they have, the Nationals are going to win 95 or 96 games, win the NL East, and be a World Series contender.
So they're going to be a World Series contender, no doubt about that. I have this team at 98 to 99, and possibly even 100 games this year. This team is by God scary, and you know what? I think not taking anything away from the Atlanta Braves. The Atlanta Braves that has great, Carmen's got the Upton brothers there, but overall, I think that this Washington Nationals team, with the progress that they had last year, I think the only worst of concern right now for this team is that you don't have Bryce Harper going down on that sophomore slump, because you need full production out of everybody, and this team does have the capabilities of getting about 100 wins this season. And this team is going to be the division winner this year. I think it's going to come down to the final couple of games of the season on who's going to win it, Atlanta or the Washington Nationals.
Yeah, the big question is Bryce Harper. That is a scary idea that he could go on a sophomore slump. But other than that, extremely talented team that should do big things this year under Davey Johnson. For now, I'm Tim Kelly, joined by Justin Godsey. This is the Real Sports Talk, 30 clubs, 30 previews, MLB special. We'll catch you guys next time.